The anti-common wisdom, but still totally true thing about this year's elections is that when Republicans hold politically indefensible positions on stuff like, say, Social Security, and Democrats hit those Republicans on those politically indefensible positions, they hit a soft target. It hurts the Republican candidate. It helps Democratic chances. Republicans get hit where they are vulnerable and they fall apart. They stop, squirm, and then run from their own positions. Stop, squirm, and run. Stop, squirm, and run. Want to see what that looked like last night in Colorado?
I was outside a church in Greeley the other day, and a senior came up to me and she said, "Ken, I'm voting for you, but please don't take my Social Security away. I need it to live." That just cuts you to the quick. And it's an absolute lie that you have put on the commercials. And you have frightened so many seniors.
You're right, seniors are scared, but it's not because of what I'm saying about what you said. It's because of what you said. You may have changed your mind, which is okay. But I'm reading, President Bush has tried to do, some call it privatization, some call it personalization of Social Security. How did you feel about that plan? Is that something you'd be willing to entertain? Buck, I'd certainly be willing to entertain it. Buck, and we're going to have to reshape the entitlement programs and privatize, or at least give free market incentives to those programs to be able to cut down on a large part of the budget deficit. Look, people know what you're saying when you say this. It's important that we say the same things in red parts of the state and blue parts of the state, in primaries and general elections, at the beginning of the campaign and the end of the campaign. People are sick and tired of politicians in Washington and politicians in Colorado that think we're not paying attention.
I have never said that we should privatize the Social Security system. No words that Senator Bennett has indicate that.
March 9th, 2010, quote, "I don't know that the federal government should be involved in a retirement plan." Quote, "The idea that the federal government should be running health care or retirement or any of those programs is fundamentally against what I believe." He said that. I didn't say that.
Democratic Senator Michael Bennet of Colorado hitting Republican Ken Buck with multiple on-the-record times that Mr. Buck has said he wants to privatize Social Security. Ken Buck first trying to deny his own position on the issue, then trying to parse what he'd said about it, then just reduced to taking it as Bennet hits Buck with Buck's unavoidable, on-the-record position like he is unloading a burp gun full of ping-pong balls at him. Joining us now is Michael Booth, political reporter for the Denver Post. Mr. Booth, thanks very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Ken Buck saying that he never held this as his position. Michael Bennet continuing to hit him on it. It seems like both the candidates here believe that privatizing Social Security is an unpopular thing to be advocating for in Colorado in the general election. As a political reporter in Colorado, do you think they are both right in that assessment?
I think there's a good reason that the Democrats are going through all of their videotapes, spending a lot of time in the editing room talking about looking at the footage that their trackers have put together for them. I think there's a very good reason that Ken Buck is trying to figure out exactly how to explain what he meant when he was talking about privatization or turning some of this over to the private sector. So, yes, they're obviously both sides agree that a lot of people care about Social Security. It's not clear that it's perfect for Michael Bennet on this one, though, because after a night like last night, I think the response from Coloradans at some point is, well, Senator Bennet, you've just shredded Ken Buck on that particular issue, but what is your plan? What is your proposal? We know there's a problem coming up. And the problem for Michael Bennet is that Ken Buck can point out that he's punted to the Deficit Commission on this and has said there's a commission for that in large part. His answer amounts to that. And I think Coloradans, especially from Senator Bennet, have wanted more definitive answers than that.
In terms of if they believe that Social Security is heading toward off some cliff, if they accept that, which is probably an argument being made by Buck, not Bennet, though.
Well, I think Bennet has other points has acknowledged that some tweaks will have to be made to Social Security to bring it in line in the future. He has talked about looking at different levels of the program for different ages of people is similar, at least in introducing it in a way that the same way that Ken Buck has done. But Ken Buck has been more specific, and he has tried to take credit for saying, at least I've put a plan out there on the table, and yes, everybody's attacking me for it, but I have a plan. Now, I think he's in trouble for some of that, but I also think that whole opinion that at least I'm standing up for something does resonate in a race against Michael Bennet.
Yeah, it would standing up for something would make more sense if he would admit to what he was standing up for, which is awkward for him at this one. What's interesting in this one is to see Bennet going at him so so hard on this. And that's anti-common wisdom right now for how Democrats are supposedly running across the country. We've also seen this from Bennett on reproductive rights. Mr. Buck has changed his previous position on this personhood amendment that's on the ballot in Colorado. Mr. Buck has changed his position on that a couple of times. Did supporting that legislation actually help him in the Republican primary?
I think people think that it did. He was definitely trying to be aggressive in going after the base voters that would come out for the primary. And since then, he has tied himself in knots a couple of times trying to explain exactly where he feels about it. And now finally has come to the conclusion that he's not going to talk about that amendment. And his final conclusion is that he won't give his opinions about statewide amendments in Colorado. And people say, well, this was on the ballot in 2008 as well, almost the exact same proposed legislation. And what did you think about it then? And his response is, I don't talk about what I did in 2008 or how I felt about the amendments in 2008 either. So he's kind of stuck now in that position of not commenting. And so there have been a couple of different positions on that, and Bennett is hitting hard on that, not so much in person yet, but in the ads that he is running and outside groups are running. That question has come up in a very tough way. I think what you saw last night in the debate, instead of Michael Bennett trying to explain his way out of an argument, he decided to punch his way out of an argument, and that made for a very lively debate.
Michael Booth, political reporter for the Denver Post, thanks very much for joining us tonight. Really appreciate your insight and your time.
Thank you.
Okay, our closing segment tonight is on election magic. I'm not a witch. I'm also not you. But I do know how to do basic statistical analysis. And basic statistical analysis is enough to reveal the closest thing that Democrats have to making magical electoral outcomes come true. Eye of Newt, toe of frog, how Democrats win in places like Missouri, coming up next.